On this episode of AV Week, how the Cisco Apple deal impacts AV, the Avnu Certification and whether or not it matters, and the mic that you can toss around. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
AV Week is brought to you by our fine group of underwriters, companies like Extron. This is AV Week, episode 212, recorded Friday, September 11th, 2015. Moral Ambiguity.
Ready.
AV Week.
Performing scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AV Week. AV Week. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. Hello, welcome. For those of you who are in the U.S., it's the start of football this weekend, and I'm quite excited about that. So we'll get to that in a second. First up and foremost, the left-hand side of my brain, I think, if I remember that right, Mr. George Tucker, engineering coordinator for World Stage and all things groovy. How are you, sir?
I am all right. I am left-handed, so that would be the right side of your brain.
Okay, the right side of my brain.
There you go.
That just means I'm never in my right state of mind. On yours, yeah. The left coast here, we've got Mr. Josh Srago. How are you, sir?
Oh, getting by, having a little fun, laying down the law, doing what I can.
You sound very, very. I don't know what you sound like. It's been, you know what, kid? It's been a long summer, and I'm ready for the summer projects to be over. And yeah, just put it that way. You ever had one of those weeks where you just go, you sit down on Friday afternoon, go, what the freak am I doing, and why am I here?
That would be every week.
Well, then you need a new job, brother. It typically isn't every week for me, but
the number 42. That's all I ever answer it.
Oh, very nice. Very well done. All right. First up and foremost, this may very well take the entirety of the show, especially with Mr. Internet of Things, but Mr. Net Neutrality here. So, a little company called Cisco got in bed with a little company called Apple.
Rear.
Well, here's the thing with that. I was talking with somebody today. I was talking with a client, and they said, "Hey, did you see the Apple announcement this week? You know, bigger iPads, the Pro, the stylus that Steve Jobs said he never wanted. The keyboard that looks really close to a Surface, all that jazz." I said, "Yeah, I saw it. That's kind of cool." I said, "That's not really the biggest Apple story of the week." He's like, "Really? What was?" And I said, "Well, that's this one right here, Cisco and Apple. Here's the deal. What Cisco and Apple, and this is their joint press release, quote unquote, Apple and Cisco today announced a partnership to create a fast lane for iOS business users by optimizing Cisco networks for iOS devices and apps, integrating iPhone with Cisco enterprise environments and providing unique collaboration on iPhone and iPad." Josh, I'm going to let you go second because you're probably going to take more time than Mr. Tucker. So, Mr. Tucker, what does this mean?
That.
Well, you could surprise me, but what does this mean?
Here's the questions I have to ask, all right? So, and I'm clear on some of these. Is this external or internal networks only? Because if it's, just in general through the infrastructure of, say, walking around in the streets, then this is a problem because it's excluding other innovations and other products. So partnership or smartnership, if you're doing it in the general public and only certain people with certain products can do it, then I think some of our agencies might have a problem with that. I also just find it a bit fascinating that they would require this. It just seems to be fraught with danger and something that's not really necessary. I don't know. It's sort of like having a purple phone. Josh, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't know. I don't see a heck of a lot out of this.
Since you passed me this article to look at, and I've thought about it for a few days, the first thing that I will start with is, can you say class action lawsuit?
Thank you. Yes. Okay.
Imagine the business environments where you have cross-platform devices. You have Windows devices, you have Android devices, you have Chrome devices, you have Apple devices, like all of these things commingling on a network. And now all of a sudden, your Apple devices are treated better. Well, this starts to get into a very, very touchy area about, is a business dictating what devices you're capable of using? If not, what are you open to? It does lead towards preferential treatment towards these things. I mean, that's the big thing, is it's going to lead to fast lanes for iOS content and iOS devices. And the one part of this that really stuck with me is the idea of you start to get into, are they, and I'm going to use this term very, very loosely, starting to try and monopolize what technology is being used in those environments. And if there's going to be preferential treatment in these environments, it gets into a very, very touchy way of dealing with that. Because, yes, Windows, let's not forget, Microsoft showed up at the Apple event this week and touted the thing that has made them more money than anything else they've ever developed, which was Office, and talked about how the new Office is going to work great with the iPad Pro, and how it's going to do all these wonderful things. And the day before that, they also mentioned how they're going to expand their Surface availability through Dell. So that way Dell now has the capability of selling that. And in Office environments, Apple still isn't the dominant device in terms of the actual PCs. And this is the part where the clarity seems vague to me about this Cisco and Apple deal is, does it apply to iOS? Does it apply to OS X? And there is a big differential there, because there's a lot of businesses that still live in the Windows environments as opposed to living in the OS X environments. However, if you get into BYOD and you're talking about the Cisco telepresence solutions, now you're dealing with, okay, there could be some really cool partnerships and really cool things going on with the availability of tablets and standardizing on the iPhone for business applications, which some people are moving towards due to better encryption. So due to the better encryption of iMessages and due to other things that are going on with that, now you're dealing with an entirely different concept of, okay, I could see it being very, very cool for the iOS world and the iOS platform. But if they're going to try and make this partnership extend over to OS X, that's where it's going to get into this. I see a class action lawsuit. I see monopoly issues that are going to start to come into play in terms of development and how other things are treated, because now all of a sudden they're basically declaring war on every OS that isn't them, and it gets into a really, really touchy matter. But going away from that, will this also drive people to move away from Cisco that don't want to support the Apple platform? So now are we going to start to see more people moving towards an extreme networks world? Are they going to start to move more towards other network manufacturers, and even moving away from Cisco telepresence because they don't want to live in that iOS or that OS X world? Will we get the shift in both directions, and will this literally draw the line in the sand between the Apple fanboys, and I say that as somebody who drives by the skeleton of the spaceship every morning, and the other people, and the people that live on Surface? Mind you, I'm doing this from a Surface Pro 3 right now, so I've already picked my side, but I'll still whip out my iPhone to make my phone calls and get on all of my other conversational communication needs. So how are they going to deal with the people that are working on cross-platform in this environment in that way?
I also wonder if this is a Hell's Gate Pandora's box to saying, well, if Apple can do it for their OS and for their specific apps, why can't we do it in general for the internet and our services that we deliver? Why can't we have tiered services? Why are we being treated like a
You really just asked me that question. Seriously? Because the FCC said no. That's
well, but then there's common practice, isn't there? And he gets away with it.
but again, this isn't the way that this is framed is not around what hits the outside internet. This is framed on what lives on your on your business intranet. This is your enterprise solution. This is what's living inside of your building. This has nothing to do with touching the outside world. It's how you're dealing with your communication within your offices. And if they're going to start giving preferential treatment, technically this goes outside of the FCC's realm, and now we're starting to look at the FTC realm. And so what will the FTC have to say about how this is going to go down and how these practices, and will the FTC actually be able to do anything about it? Because then you're getting into, well, now you're telling a business how to run its operation, because you're saying what you're doing is an unfair practice because you're restricting limitations of what devices can be worked with, when in essence, that's the business's decision to choose. Do I want to operate with Cisco knowing that it has an iOS preferential or an OS X preferential, or do I want to choose a different switch manufacturer? So we're starting to get into that moral ambiguity area of, do I go with the yes, theoretically, this is just open marketplace. They have the right to do this in order to try and improve sales and try and improve their reach. And Apple has notoriously never been great in the business environment. But when you take into account all the things that they're doing, the partnership with IBM last year or earlier this year, I can't even remember when that happened anymore, in order to deal with the with cloud things and all of the things that they were doing within that enterprise storage environment. And now they're going into the network partnership with Cisco. How far are they going to go to try and oust Windows? And given the fact that we are moving into this mobile environment, I mean, I've talked to several manufacturers in the AV environment and construction environment in the Bay Area, and a lot of them are moving towards either Surface or iPad for their field people, because they don't want to carry around a laptop anymore. They want even easier tools to carry with them. And so they keep exploring that. And so we're starting to get into that environment where BYOD isn't BYOD anymore. It's now company-provided device that is a BYOD. And you're starting to move farther and farther towards that. Yeah. And if you're getting preferential treatment because of networks or because of some other situation, at what point will this reach? Will the line be drawn that, well, if I want to use an Apple product, that means I have to use Cisco, or if I want to use Windows, then I need to avoid Cisco, because if somebody gets on with Apple, it's going to screw up my network in some way.
Well, and here's the other thing with this. I see two different sides of this, and to address some of the concerns that you guys have brought up initially, I read this release and it says, it specifically mentions iOS business users, right? So back to Josh's point about what is this iOS or is this OS X? I see this more as the mobile platform, whether that's a tablet or a phone or an iPod. I see kind of the class action suit and giving preferential treatment, but to your point, Josh, if I decide I don't want to be an Apple house, and Apple has been very difficult to work with historically when it comes to enterprise, then you don't choose them. You don't use the Cisco. You use an HP. You use somebody else. You use a Microsoft, for crying out loud. And the other thing is, when you look at education and you look at control. First, the thing with education is huge when it comes to the iPad. There are universities, there are K-12 that are giving out tablets, and the ones that are giving out predominantly are iPads, and education is a big consumer of Cisco, right? So those two factors put in, and then you bring in the thing with control. One of the biggest complaints that people have when it comes to using iPads for control is this network lag, right? Where it's not always on, or you have drops and stuff like that. I see this as a boon for control. Whether I don't care whose control you're using, Crestron's, AMX's, whoever's, Extron's. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's always been this thing with the iPad app where keeping connectivity sometimes is difficult. So I see this announcement as a positive in that direction. Now, whether or not they're able to keep it because of the whole being unfair thing, I don't know. All right.
I joined late. I just got the link to join you guys, so sorry that I'm...
That's all right. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark from Beale Street. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How you doing?
He has a
Good to see you again.
You.
He has a Patriots thing in his background, and so I'm not going to ask any
No,
questions.
it's a Giants thing. No,
Huh?
Fix that. It's Giants. They're a little closer.
It's a Super Bowl.
Oh, it's a Giants and Patriots. Okay, it's a Super Bowl.
Look at the helmet. Can you see the helmet?
Oh, okay, there it is. New York Giants. All right, sorry about that.
2007 Giants Super Bowl signed helmet by the entire team.
Very nice. Very well done. All right, next up, Internet of Things. There's a brand spanking new foundation has been developed here. The Internet of Things Security Foundation has been formed. It's a large list of different members. This is from the EE Times. And Josh, we're going to kick this off with you first. First of all, is this something that we needed? The AA?
Yes. God, yes.
Okay.
Oh, for the love of God, we needed this.
So why?
Okay, Molly Bloom.
Let's put it this way. If you're going to be dealing with the Internet of Things, you're talking about hundreds, potentially thousands of manufacturers that are all interpreting how their devices are going to connect to a network and potentially interact with each other, but definitely interacting with the network at large, either your home network or the internet if they have to reach out and ping a database in order to order your next set of diapers, gallon of milk, whatever it may be. So if we have all of these devices that are living on a system and there isn't some form of standardization over what security needs to be in order to protect this data, in order to protect that access, we are screwed as to what data is going to be available. I mean, security in and of itself is already a touchy subject in general because there's so many issues and there's so many complications. But now that we're dealing with more and more devices which are carrying more and more personal information, thinking of all of your smartwatches, for instance, which carry potential, health data, making sure that data is protected is going to be very, very important. So seeing all these groups starting to come together and saying, okay, well, we have to look at security, we have to make sure that this is protected. And I mean, it goes so much farther beyond that because smart devices isn't wearable anymore. We talked about on that open mic a couple weeks ago, it gets into your car now. And having all these interconnected devices being able to communicate with one another and not have security on them is going to be detrimental to A, the safety of the people that have them, and B, adoption because of that lack of safety.
All right, Mr. Tucker, what do you think about this whole thing? Is there a reason that we need this Internet of Things Security Council?
Well, I think that Josh pretty well summed it up, but the truth is, yes, there is no real definable standard that protects us from using these mesh network devices, is what they really are, from the data being gathered in some way that we don't know. As Josh said, there are a multitude of manufacturers doing a multitude of protocols who are supposed to be sharing data. Where in it is the security to say we need that we're not going to let that data slip out? As Josh says, the iWatch with the heart monitor or with medical stuff. They showed that off at the Apple event a couple of days ago, where it was really high-level medical stuff. And the gentleman from Bill Street is showing that. But so there is a real concern there. This is no longer just your refrigerator telling you that you need more carrots. This is high-level, high-profile data that is probably a honeypot for people looking to garner information and do identity theft. So, yeah, it has to be. If this is going to happen, and it's happening on the building level. There was what they call the building Internet of Things, the BIoT, in which they are controlling entire regions and real estate areas, entire buildings based on an Internet of Things mesh network communication. You don't want someone being able to screw with that or make it cold or make it hotter or turn all the heat off for the pipes to freeze. I mean, those kind of things are really serious issues on what most people see as a consumer level product, in which it's not.
All right, Mark, from your standpoint, whether that's in the office or in your home, are you worried about security when it comes to some of these devices?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I don't think I can talk to the level that our other two gentlemen here. I'm more of an AV guy than getting into networking and Internet of Things, but I have more of a consumer-oriented view towards that. Like I said, I was kidding around showing my iWatch, but that whole thing about security and allowing your data to be out there, whether it's for near field, swiping your Apple Pay or anything like that, you just it's an easy example to give, because you look at the Target getting hacked and governments. I mean, there's so many ways that people are getting into our personal data. It just seems like it's just one easier way to get in, because it's sort of out there. Without some security methods, it doesn't take more than one time of people messing with your personal data to probably have you freak out that you're never going to, have anything electronic in your life again. Go back to writing pencils and crayons. So I think I just hope that we don't regress because of all the technology out there and start to shy away from technology because of the bad guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
go ahead, George.
I'm sorry to
That's
interrupt, but the millennials don't see a lot of privacy as being privacy. And when they want privacy, they use temporary. So the Periscopes, the Meerkats, the Snapchats,
yeah.
These are big things because their idea of privacy is letting it go away. Yeah, somebody could save it if they really wanted to, but for the most part, they're looking at that. Everything else is wide open. It's living out loud, as they say.
I think you hit a great point of the age groups.
Yeah. I mean, and to Josh's point, this data floating in the air, it's sort of like, what synesthesia is. People who can see music and colors when it plays. This to a hacker is the synesthesia of data. It's sort of like, just plug it right out of the air. There it is. Thank you very much. Sort of like a Wi-Fi encryption key that just travels with it. What is that?
Or the dongle, yeah. Well, and the other thing is, and I brought politics up the last time we had an open mic. Hillary Clinton she was joking, and you take this joke for what it's worth. She was joking that she likes using Snapchat because the messages automatically delete once she's done with them. So the server, funny. Never mind. All right, for my buddies over at Daily Do.
That was a punchline.
Shut up. You know what?
I missed it.
God. I shouldn't say I will never mention politics on this show again, because I'm sure I will. But
you have every year, at least once or twice a year.
At least once or twice, yes. All right, so for our buddies over at Daily Do, the Digital Signage Federation, the only independent not-for-profit trade organization serving the digital signage industry in the U.S., has announced a year-over-year membership increase of 18%. Here's the interesting part, Mr. Tucker. Industry consultants up 47% in general. Vendors is 33%. That's kind of interesting. And then end users 32%. What does this tell us about this industry? Is it one of these things where people are finally finding out about this organization, or are we really kind of hitting a nice stride with digital signage?
Well, the number again, how many percent are consultants? 47%?
47%.
Wow. Well, I don't know if that speaks to consultants can just basically specify it and it's sort of off-the-shelf kind of gearish, or is this that people don't quite know what to do with it but know they need to do something? I wonder if that's really what's happening. It's sort of akin to the, we're clients. What do we want? Something. When do we want it? We don't know. So I'm not quite clear why that would be, although it concerns me. I would think that you wouldn't really want the consultant. You'd want the media content people to be your one-stop shop. Create content for me for my in-store stuff. Who's supplying the materials? They'll find them. Why am I needing a consultant? I'm not clear on that.
Well, that makes sense. Mr. Srago, from your perspective, is this kind of an up-and-coming thing, or is this just, hey, they're finding out about this now?
I think that exactly explains why there's more consultants. Is a lot of people are starting to say, well, how do I do this? What am I doing? They're going to somebody to ask. A lot of these business owners, it's digital signage is still one of the biggest growth markets. We see the reports on it every year that it's continuing to grow and continuing to be a bigger player in terms of the AV space. And there's been a long-standing argument for several years now about who creates the content. You have distributors now that are offering content services in this industry. So you get into that kind of application, but yeah, it's these people. So you get these AV folks that are going up and saying, hey, you need these things. And you have these end users, and yeah, the end users are up because they're trying to find out more. They're trying to get more information, and consultants are seeing this as a money-making opportunity. Maybe they don't sell anything, but they get to sell their time to advise and say whether or not it's going to benefit them or how it'll benefit them. In terms of the content creation, I still and I'm in the minority in this one. I still maintain hire yourself a graphic designer. It'll be cheaper.
It depends. It depends on your level, though, doesn't it? I mean, you've got to hit a certain critical mass before that makes sense, because graphic designers don't make minimum wage. So they also don't make $100,000 a year, obviously, depending on where you are and all that jazz. So.
Well, and you can also outsource to them as separate people. So even if it's just an outsourced graphic designer, but the thing is, nobody knows your company better than the people that work in your company. If you have internal marketing, or you have an internal plan, or you have any kind of development of any kind, then you have the best knowledge of what you want your message to be. So taking that message of what you want your message to be, and then applying it and saying, here's what I want it to do, help me create these graphics, or help me create this content, relying on outsourced people to do that. And yeah, AV people could bring those people on board, but the cost of employing somebody for an AV company and the cost of outsourcing it to a third party, I mean, you can find those people on several of the interface sites on the internet these days of, hey, I need to find a graphic designer. Let me go to, and off the top of my head, of course, I'm blanking on any of the websites.
Elance,
Odesk, all those guys.
Yeah, all those.
They exist. And they're helpful, and sometimes you can even name your price as to what you're willing to pay for those kinds of things. So getting the content creation is an entirely different aspect, but seeing the growth and seeing the interest and seeing it develop, and as we know, it's been proven that having having the second screen experience at home for media has improved drastically the way that shows and the way that other media is received and the way that it's interpreted and the way that it's absorbed by the people. And having that screen in front of them to give them something to interact with for your products only improves that drastically when it comes to sales.
All right, Mark and I'm not going to ask you, Mark's from Beale Street. They make these really cool speakers. The DSF executive director said the digital signage industry is demanding more professional development, networking, and real business opportunities that connect buyers and vendors, regardless of the vertical, right? Whether you're selling speakers, you're selling displays, you're selling digital signage. How do you do that? Is I guess the best way to ask that question. How do you connect buyers and vendors in a seamless way?
You can answer that for me?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. No, happy to answer that. Well, wow, there's obviously the large trade shows are there. You're talking about when you say vendors and buyers, you're talking about the dealers or the people that buy from the dealers?
Kind of both, yeah, right? I mean, you're looking for both.
Yeah. Well, then there's several parts. So obviously the trade shows that are in existence, the Infocoms of the world are one thing. I've been actually involved in local shows. It's more for the residential side, but these are rep-sponsored shows called Technology and Business Summits, and these are more tabletop one-on-one experiences where the manufacturers go off, not to show off all that cool stuff that they have, but they have some real one-on-one time. There's education, usually with these events, and they're for dealers that really just don't go to the trade shows. As much as these dealers are out there, they love the Infocoms or the CEOs or the ISCs over in Europe over the world. A lot of times they just don't travel for lots of reasons. They're too busy, they don't want to send their people, they don't want to have the expense. So these one-on-one conversations about what they have in their portfolio are very valuable, because these dealers wouldn't get exposed to that otherwise if they don't go to the events. So that's to the dealer side. To the end user side, well, it goes back to some of the consulting questions that the other gentlemen were talking about here a minute ago. But then I think there has to be a lot more outreach to educate the people of what's available, because I'm more on the residential side than the commercial side for sure. But on the residential side, the better dealers are going out there, finding the architects, they're finding the designers, in this case, they're finding the specifiers for these buildings that create these atmospheres, because AV and other things, what I have seen are a hindrance or a hassle or an eyesore to the people in these industries. So going out to show them how they can have technology integrate with what they're doing is something that I still see as very flawed in the way most dealers go to market.
Mm-hmm.
That helps.
No, it definitely helps. That's why we asked. So, all right, from our friends over at AV Network, avnetwork.com. That's New Bay. That they have all a lot of their magazines all together on that one site. This is a question for you all, and this is going to be kind of fun. The drill down: Avnu Certification. Does it really matter? And we have a fabulous quote here. Quote unquote, independent third-party verification brings AV to the next level of technology. Oftentimes we find that we're discovering whether our devices and control systems like to talk to each other through trial and error, says Josh Srago. Wow, that was awesome. So here's the thing. In all seriousness, we've dealt with Avnu. Good Lord, 3 or 4 years now. We've done some podcasts for him. We've had him on the show a number of times, and I'm still optimistic about them. Right. I think they've had some missteps. I think that Dante has come to the forefront a lot. But I think that their certification is very interesting, and I think that it does matter. Josh, since you were the only one of us 4 that was quoted in the article, does it really matter?
Yes. As I said, and it matters simply because we're dealing with and it goes. I mean, it's repeating myself from the IoT conversation, which is we've got all these manufacturers that are making products based on their interpretations and their designs and what they wanted to do. And there is an investment made by a lot of the control manufacturers to talk to those other products. But having this third-party verification ensures that it actually happens. One of the interesting things that came up recently is, and I asked this question at Infocom when Tim, you and I got to talk to the folks at AMX and SVSI, mm-hmm. was how they view the future, given the fact that SVSI was originally just its own video over IP, but now that it's partnered with a company that also makes control systems, how are other control systems going to feel about that? And in terms of wanting to play in that backyard, and with what the Avnu folks dealing with time-sensitive networks and AVB are doing, is they're creating an environment where it's all about just making sure that the data is getting between the points. They're basically going to be being able to play referee to all of these manufacturers, whether or not, I mean, they may not want to play with each other, but if you want your product certified under this, they get to sit there and say, okay, well, you have to be able to talk to these things and you have to be able to do it in a certain way, and we have to make sure that the data is getting across. So if there's tweaks to the code and tweaks to the things that have to happen, that's still verification, and that can be made in field, that can be made during the certification, because the level of certification still isn't quite there yet in terms of my understanding personally as to how deep they're going into what is being certified. Is it just translating what data is being transmitted? Is it making sure that it's talking to all other AVP players? I'm still a little unclear about that part of the Avnu message. Personally, I'm sure if I asked or if I searched, the information is out there. But having that third-party verification brings us into the IT communication world, where they have bodies that deal with this, ensuring that they're meeting a standard, that they're meeting this level, that they're meeting a base minimum for having communication between devices. And that's something that, as a communications protocol, has never really existed in the AV world. I mean, we have RS-232, but everybody gets to interpret it, and everybody gets to write their own variation on what the ASCII codes are going to be in terms of going into those devices. Wouldn't it be nice if all the displays actually had the same code for power on, power off?
Oh,
wouldn't that
bite
be
your
great?
tongue.
Don't get me started on hex-weighted ASCII or ASCII-weighted hex.
I'm just bringing it up as the point of creating that base level standard. And theoretically, with the way the Avnu Alliance is going, they can say you have to communicate in this way, making seamless integration much simpler, much easier over time.
Okay, and to be a little bit more clear, if you're not familiar with how that happens, if you want to get your product, I'm gonna pick on Mark for a second. If Beale Street had a TSN speaker and it had a RJ45 in the back, and they wanted to make a Beale Street a TSN speaker, they would send that speaker to the University of New Hampshire, and they would spend the time and have all the rigors in place and the rubric to test that speaker. Right, that's what happens, and that's what we're talking about when we say certification. Josh is right, though. If you just want to say, "Hey, we're using TSN, we're using the Avnu protocols," no, we're not certified. They could still, in theory, kind of do their own stuff. And then if they want to get it certified, then they have to play well with others. Mr. Tucker, you and I have talked about not only what Josh just mentioned, having all the same displays talk to each other at the same time. We have famously talked about SMPTE on this program more than once, and the loveliness of it at the time.
Love my time code.
Exactly. And that's kind of what it was, right? It was universal time code. And
I could wax rhapsodic about Vitsy as well if you want.
well,
Let's not get started on drop frame at this point, because syncing that's just a pain.
no, it's not. You just do 29.97 and you're fine. Sorry, that was a bad.
Carry the 3.
I'm
add a
glad
frame.
you got
That was a
math.
bad
I'm
video
glad
joke
at least
is what
you
it
brought
was.
the math out.
Yeah.
Tech humor is going crazy now.
Yeah. So why does stuff like this matter? Why does just having a body like this? I mean, Srago mentioned the fact that the IT industry has bodies like this. Why does this matter in AV?
Well, certainly everything that Josh said is true. I mean, you have to have some sort of set of standards. Look at, I keep getting it wrong, CEC? CEC.
Yeah.
Is there really a body that's supposed to govern that? Yes. Do they really govern it?
No.
Does it work? No. So, I mean, therein lies your proof of the pudding, as they would say. These guys are here to say, look, it should be a standard, as I've said often before, like MIDI, in which they've hammered it out amongst manufacturers to say, this is what it does. If you want something special, there's this little side place for you, and there you go. So you can differentiate your product, and you can still be on the network and work flawlessly, and no one has to blame the box for doing something because it's certified. I do like that they've actually done a threefold testing too. Josh was mentioning, or you mentioned, about sending it to a university. That's a backlog. That's a real problem for developers, but they do have an in-house capability. So if you're smart and you have the resources, you can get your stuff verified much quicker down the pipe by doing it yourself than sending it off, I guess, for a final verification and stamping of the approval. But I like the idea for those reasons. Let's get it to work. Let's actually get something like that has the TSN capability, and we can verify that, and we're not buying a gray market product and then nothing works and everyone scratches their head for 3 weeks, losing money.
Yep, absolutely.
I feel like I just quoted Spaceballs.
Jeez,
Hit the switch for more money.
Gracious. All right, Mark.
Yes.
As a manufacturer, how does this work, right? And I'm not asking you specifically for TSN because I'm not aware of Beale Street having any Avnu certified products or even any Avnu products. You could break a news right here and tell me that you're developing one. That would be really cool. But how does... Huh?
Newsflash. No.
Yeah. How does it work working with groups like this? Is it a positive experience? Is it a negative experience? Do you think it helps your business grow?
In terms of standardizations and
Yes, sir.
certification?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, again, if you limit it just to loudspeakers, which is our focus. I mean, a loudspeaker's a loudspeaker. I mean, the way we do things is very different because of the way we make our enclosure and all that. But in terms of communications and having it talk to things, IP-based speakers and all, that's never really taken off. Is that more what you're referring to?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It just, it's interesting because a couple of companies have tried it, and whether it's ahead of its time or it was a price barrier or people just didn't want to be running, the proper types of Cat 5 or 6 or whatever to loudspeakers in addition to the speaker wire, it just has never gone down the path that I believe could be very interesting, because if you could send information over the network to a speaker to make it do different things, I mean, that's pretty amazing. You're not tweaking the room as much. Of course, now acoustic treatment comes into play. So if I'm looking at just from the speaker side of things, it's something that a few companies have tried but haven't really done well. When you add things that we do like amplifiers and all that, putting those on a network, that's pretty standard now.
Yeah.
I don't know if it helps to answer your question, but it's just the speakers have never gone that direction successfully.
Okay, very good. All right, guys, let's wrap this up here. Srago mentioned the Microsoft Dell thing, so that's I think we'll skip that one, unless any of the three of you want to say something profound about Dell selling services.
I like the Surface Pro 3. I highly recommend it for all people, but I wouldn't recommend buying a service contract through Dell just because, well, if you're in the technology field, I would hope you could support your own stuff.
It depends. There are small companies that don't have IT departments. Just saying.
Again, that was just my arrogant way of saying I love my Pro 3. I love my Pro 3. I love my Pro 3.
He wanted to get a dig in, but of course Apple did invent that little add-on keyboard, by the way.
Yeah, they
Did you
did.
not notice that?
So I
during
take it you saw the comic from 2012.
Oh, it was awesome.
Yes.
If you didn't see it, we'll put it on the show notes. It was a comic, literally from 3 years ago when the Surface was announced, and it was a horrible caricature of Steve Ballmer. I mean, it accentuated all the bad parts of him, and he was showing the Surface, and he was saying it's got a keyboard and this. I hate the keyboard. These are all these Apple fanboys yelling at him. That's horrible. Da, 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 da. And the last frame, the second frame is, you know what? In 3 years, when Apple has a keyboard, you're gonna love it. And the last frame is Tim Cook, of course, 3 years later, literally saying, "Hey, here's a keyboard," and the audience is saying, "Ooh, wow, you invented that, didn't you?" Yes, we did.
We've reinvented and rethought the input process.
Yes.
Tactile is in.
Shoot, styluses are in. I still remember from reading well, not only from Steve Jobs' original keynote about the iPad, but in the biography about him, he hated styluses, right?
Yeah, but there was a caveat to that, was there not? I mean, he knew the art community wanted it. There was 1,000 little add-ons for artists to add to their apples to draw with. So there were pads with styluses.
Well, and they've sold them since then.
Entry.
Yeah. They've sold them since the very beginning. But he was saying that in his opinion, and since it was his company, it was his opinion, he even said at one point, if they ever release a stylus, they've gone too far off course.
Well, but again, I think that was a matter of entering data, or like the Newton or the old Palms.
Oh my gosh,
you needed
the Newton
stylus to move things, right? You needed it to enter things in graffiti. The iPad was not intended for that. But on the artist side, with artists' applications, you needed an input device that would actually have the gradations and fine lining and differences that they wanted.
Yeah.
I forget what the name of the company is that makes a pencil input. Is it called Pencil or 53?
Well, there's several of them. I mean, there really are several of them.
They're the big one now, 53, and they have a product called Pencil.
Yeah.
It looks like a pencil.
Well, and 53 has a very cool paper app, which sounds odd.
That's right. They were the ones that came out with paper. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. It's for people who like writing on weird, I don't know where my moleskin is, but who like just kitschy little journals and stuff like that. The paper app is very cool because it has all these different colors, and you can do the old sepia or sepia color paper, quote unquote, on the iPad Surface. So, all right, last but not least, this is just something fun. It's called the Catch Box. This is from our friends over at AVinteractive.com. It's the world's first throwable microphone. If you're watching the video, I'll see if I can't, totally jack this up and show the video on it. So here's what you've got. You've got a squishy little cube, and it has a microphone in the middle of it, and the speaker is speaking using the microphone. And when someone raises their hand and says, "Hey, I have a comment," they throw it to them. And so, okay, that's all I got. That I just thought was cool. So,
I will miss the days of the metal-bodied handhelds which were used to actually throw at terrible ideas. But the point that they made in the article, which was really entertaining, was that this is a good interactive way of doing it. It makes it a little bit more fun. The one thing I'm very, very curious about here will be what happens when somebody gets a little over-aggressive and that element passes within 3 inches of a speaker. Because, feedback as air crosses that element is going to be hilarious when the element is constantly moving by things.
Mm-hmm. And then
I wonder if there's a way it switches off.
Maybe
an accelerometer of some sort.
Yeah, like an accelerometer that realizes it's in air and it mutes itself.
There's not to give them a pump, but there's a better solution to that. There's something called crowd mics.
Crowd mics is they're the
no. And hang on for a second here. Crowd mics are not the answer to everything. They're not, because
not to my lunch menu, but
it's very nice. Mr. Tucker is in a several 100,000 square foot warehouse, right?
Yeah.
Srago is in an office. Mark's in an office. I'm in a little itty bitty cubicle office. So crowd mics are not the answer to all of our. If we were all doing a video conference, which is kind of in essence what we're doing, crowd mics would not be the answer here, and much apologies to all the folks who've got these really great groovy, the center, almost looks like a fluorescent light fixture microphones. Not every situation calls for crowd mics.
Well, wait a minute. We're talking about the app. You know what we're talking about. There's an app called Crowd Mic.
Oh, I thought you meant crowd mics.
We've actually done an apps show about it.
Yes.
In fact.
Yes.
So I mean, that to me seems to be a better solution, though. That somebody can control it. I mean, this is a team building.
That's the thing there and you hit it right there. It's a different kind of solution. I see crowd mics as being a much more formal, a much more very, very big in the education world. But if you're talking about team building, and this is a characteristic development for something that would be on the show Silicon Valley, which is oddly accurate of what happens in Silicon Valley. As the fun little kitsch thing that you throw into a conference to improve team building, to improve audience participation. Because even with crowd mics, there's still the hesitation that you have to stand up in front of people and do this. Whereas if you're throwing that microphone around like a beach ball, it does promote more people getting involved in the conversation.
I just realized what it was like to me. It's Mr. Microphone for the 21st century.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, baby, I'll be back later.
Jeez. All right, that's going to do it. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see Mark in about a month. For those of you going to CEDIA, you will be there, correct?
Yes, booth 7409. We're a little self-promoting.
74. And what will you have to give away? Because in case anybody who likes swag, what are you giving away at 7409?
Something.
Good.
Now there's a teaser.
You
know what? He's not telling enough. We've all covered this booth a number of times. Awesome speakers, remarkable stuff. And the story you tell about them, you have to go to the show to hear. One, you say it, and two, to hear these things. Because if you were at it was at Infocom this year in Florida, they were all along the hallway.
Yes, correct. Nice sponsorship.
And remarkable sound. I mean, I love talking to you, and I love the whole concept, and it's a great little box.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Or lack of box.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. The first time we saw him was last year at CEDIA, and you did something similar where you had them hanging from the poles, and it was
and ISE.
And ISE, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Fun little idea I had, because you have to kind of keep the feel of Beale Street Audio and have a good way to display it and show off our stuff. So thank you. Appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the checks are in the mail.
How do people get a hold of you or Beale Street?
Me directly is just Mark at Get Beale, and Beale is spelled Beale, or if you're French, it's Beale. Mark at getbeale.com. Info@beale.com is the main line, and anytime you could email me, call me directly, 949-472-4141. I'm always happy to give my direct line out for anybody who wants to chat about what we do, they do.
And very good. And since we are big football fans here, just for clarification, you are a Giants fan.
New York Football Giants.
All right, very good.
Being from Jersey,
huh?
Being from New Jersey, you got to have a little Giants in you.
You got to. Well, you know what? You Jersey folks confuse the heck out of me when it comes to sports, because I have friends that are Giants and Jets fans, right? Within 2 miles of each other. I have friends who are Yankees and Mets fans within 2 miles of each other. So all y'all are crazy.
Don't even talk about hockey with Rangers and Devils.
Well, Rangers, Devils, and Islanders. Don't forget.
Islanders, yeah. They're that other team.
Jeez.
Supposedly there's a Buffalo team, but I know nothing about it.
I don't either.
Somewhere.
All right. Speaking of hockey, because Georgia doesn't even realize football exists. Hockey is 28 days away, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Rangers. So how can people get a hold of you and your musings?
At Tucker2s or Tucker2s on most social networks. I'm there.
All right. Very good. And last but not least, he doesn't like, well, I shouldn't say you don't like any sports. You like base. I almost said it. You do. You're just.
I don't like any sports. Let's see. I have my Oakland A's.
Yes.
I actually taunted a series of Cavs fans during the NBA Finals in Orlando during Infocom this year because of the lovely Golden State Warriors, NBA champs. And I also and tomorrow I'm actually going to be going to the Cal Bears because I grew up with college football, going to see Cal. So I'll be going to my first football game of the season to watch the #1 passing offense in the country take on the San Diego State Aztecs.
Yeah, give me that stat you gave me yesterday, because that's very impressive, regardless.
Jared Goff, our starting quarterback, threw for 309 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception in 30 minutes. Because after the first half of our game last week, we were up 52 or 54 to nothing.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah.
So we put up when we only hung 73, 72 on them last week. So the final score was like 72-14. So yeah, it's a prolific passing attack. We refer to it as the Bear Raid for our lovely Golden Bears.
Very nice. All right, Mr. Srago, how do people get a hold of you?
Best way to do so is Twitter @JSRAGO, or you can find me on LinkedIn. That seems to be the 2 most popular ways as I inch closer to 900 followers and just surpassed that 501 plus mark on LinkedIn. So thanks to everybody who's following and connecting. It's been a fun ride the last couple of years to watch these numbers climb. So I appreciate it. But you can also find me writing occasionally at AVNation.tv. The latest thing I have out, though, is over at Commercial Integrator, where I talked about the 5 trends that will shape the next 5 years in AV. So if you want to see me break out my crystal ball, you can go download that white paper at Commercial Integrator. And again, eventually I will get soundreason.org back up to what I'm looking to do with it. It's just been going through a little bit of a transition period as I've moved more of my content over to AVNation.
Yes. And we do appreciate it, because it's good stuff. You do need to go down with that white paper, though. It's very well done. So, my name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me. Actually, if you want to, you can unfollow me and get Srago over the 900 mark. So, I think I have at least 5 people. So you 5 people unfollow me and go follow Srago. But go by the website if you would, please. Mr. Srago is very, very, very right. He writes a lot. Mr. Tucker writes a lot. Actually, George has been doing something kind of cool the last couple of months. He's been doing some Throwback Thursday. Is that right, George? Where he's bringing out some articles he wrote a number of years ago. First of all,
see how they stand up and how they compare.
Well, not just that, but you need to be well read sometimes to read Mr. Tucker's pieces, because if you're not, then you're going to learn words, and
and ideas. Some of them were written for a manufacturer's newsletter that I used to produce. So sometimes I had a little bit more liberty to be snarky and a little, sort of mind stretching with people.
They're very cool though. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
We love our very own Hunter S. Tucker.
Yes. Hunter S. Tucker. I like
if
that.
If only I could still smoke, But at least I don't mumble.
That's between you and your wife.
Interviews?
Yes.
I know. How are you, Hunter? Wonderful guy.
So, AVNation.tv, all sorts of people. This is Friday. Mr. Mike Brandis from Vadio gives us a Friday 5 every week. Really great stuff. We also have some really cool new shows in the pipeline that we are in the process of cooking up for you. All sorts of different things. We have a new EdTech coming down the pipeline, a new state of control, lighting shows, Pico projectors, all sorts of different things. So check that out if you would, please. Me personally, I'm a Bears fan, so pray for me for the next 5 years, I guess. Until Cutler's out of there. So go Bears. I know you're going to lose regardless. So, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. This has been AV Week.